Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. And today, we are joined by international renowned ski instructor, best-selling author, as well as inspirational and motivational speaker, Bernard Chalky White. He's going to be talking to us about the 2 questions that changed his life and can change yours. And we're going to be talking to him about his life as a ski instructor and anything else that he's going to be up to. So, Bernard, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me, Curtis. It's great to be on your show.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, as you said my name, everybody, I'm universally known as Chalky. Even in the ski business, a lot of people don't even know what my last name is. It's just Chalky. I know that there's the other guy from Boardwalk Empire, but I'm sorry to say I've been around a lot longer than him. You might have heard of that show. But anyway, I, as you said earlier on, I'm from London originally, and I grew up in an abusive family, a violently abusive family, where my father used to not only beat me, but he would also relentlessly beat my spinally injured mother, which I've never obviously been able to forgive him for that. And at the age of 13, I decided to go on strike at school because he had this thing about my education where he wanted me to be this great scholar, which I was probably never likely to be. And instead of getting that, when I was 16, I failed every single graduation from school exam. And he got the opposite of what he wanted, basically nothing. But all of that put in me a determination that I would live my life on my terms and not his. And that's what I've managed to do. And as we just mentioned, you talked about the 2 questions, how 2 questions can change your life, which is all portrayed in my book, Keep Chewing the Granite, How 2 Questions Can Change Your Life. And those 2 questions have gotten me through all kinds of difficulties in my life and really helped me to achieve every single goal, a major goal that I've ever wanted. The only time I've really failed as an adult was when I didn't use those 2 questions.
Well, before we get into those 2 questions, let's talk about how you got the nickname Chalky and why they call you that.
You might have read that I was a policeman, but I started out working life as a police cadet. And when I was 16, this had been now in 1964, a long time ago, 61 years ago, the first day I joined the police cadets, and I'm in the gymnasium, and the drill sergeant comes in and he's asking everybody their names. And he gets to me, and I won't use the vernacular, but he said, "What's your bleeping name?" So I said, "Right, sir." He said, "It's not, sir, it's bleeping sergeant." I nearly used the vernacular to him, but I thought I better not. And of course, all the other guys that I joined with were there, and they heard this. You know, and he said, "We've got a Chalky White," and I've been Chalky White ever since.
All right, amazing. Well, how did you become a ski instructor, an author, and a speaker? Because you're internationally renowned as a ski instructor.
Yeah. Well, what happened was when I was 26, I was asked one of the most important questions in my life. When somebody walked because I was a serving police officer at the time, because I was an actual policeman for 9 years, and a friend of mine walked in and he said to me, and I'd never skied before, and he said, "Hey, Chalky, do you want to go on a ski trip?" And I've basically been on a ski trip ever since. And what happened was I went on a couple of vacations. My first ever ski trip as a complete beginner was when I was 26 to Italy. And then we went to a place called Andorra, you may have heard of, a little country which is just north of Barcelona in Spain. And I saw all these expats working there, Australians and South Africans, a couple of Canadians, even Americans. And they were working on lifts and working in restaurants. And then some of them were even ski instructors. And I thought, God, I wonder if I could have some of that sometime. So anyway, I went back home and I've been procrastinating for years in the police, always wanted to leave, but not really having the guts to leave. And then one evening, and all this stuff's just going through my head. I want to leave. I want to leave. I want to go back to Andorra. I want to go and try and be a ski instructor. Still not having the guts to leave. Then inadvertently, these two questions came into my head. First one was something like, "What if I don't go and try to fulfill my dreams in Andorra and start to travel, which I've always wanted to do? What will be the repercussions if I don't?" And of course, I hated the answers to that. And of course, the big one, that horrible word, which I still detest to this day, was, "I'll probably regret it for the rest of my life." So I was feeling pretty miserable after asking that. But then I changed it around and I immediately asked myself, but what if I do go back to Andorra and try and realize my dreams, and I'll be able to travel, I'll learn to ski, might even be able to become a ski instructor? What then? And of course, I loved all the answers to that question. Well, I might end up being a ski instructor. You never know. It's a big ambition, but you never know. But I might be able to work in a restaurant or on a lift when I start out. Well, what happens between those two questions, the answers that you can get a major change of emotion from negative emotions to very positive emotions. And that's what happened at that moment. Well, the very next day, after 9 years of procrastinating as a policeman, I resigned my post, never to return. And that was on the 10th of August, 1975. And here I am now basically a retired ski instructor, but still a speaker. And obviously I've been writing books and all that stuff. So yeah, I've had a fantastic ride. There's no doubt about that.
Well, let's talk about the two questions that changed your life. Tell us about those two questions, how they changed your life, and how they could change anybody else's life.
Well, yeah, I just explained to you, of course, how they very first changed my life. They got me out. They got me out of the police force and into the life I wanted. I became, first of all, became a ski bum in Andorra, and eventually became a ski instructor. And of course, I was in Andorra that very first season, that full season that I was there, and I got a job working in a restaurant. And halfway through the season, when I started to be able to ski just a little bit, still not very well, of course, and I announced to a bunch of ski instructors, "I'm going to try and become a ski instructor." And one of these instructors shouted out, "Chalky, you'll never be a ski instructor as long as you've got a hole where the sun doesn't shine." And of course, that got me down a little bit at first, but then later on, I got sat down and I used the what if questions again. And what if I don't continue on trying in my quest to become a ski instructor? What will happen to me then? And of course, that nasty word regret, it comes up nearly every time. I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I don't. Then I changed it around and did exactly the same thing. I asked the positive, got great answers, and I carried on. And I did one more ski season after that. I went from Andorra, 1,300 miles away, to Scotland, and I passed my very first ski instructor's exam the first time. And it would be the only time I would ever pass a ski instructor exam the first time. In fact, it took me 8 attempts to pass 3 exams, and those what if questions stopped me from quitting, because I really did think about quitting at some stage, a couple of stages, because I kept on failing and failing and failing until I went down to New Zealand, where they made me change the way I skied. I changed my way of skiing, and I passed their exam the first time. 8 attempts to pass 3 exams, and I still work with that New Zealand qualification if and when I teach, even today. And you were saying, how do other people use those two questions? Well, there's in the introduction to my book, I talk about a gentleman whose family were in Venezuela, which was and still is a pretty dangerous place to live, and he knew he had to get his family out of Venezuela. So he asked himself the two questions: what if I don't try to get my family out of Venezuela? What might be the repercussions of that? And the answers he got were terrible. Well, I'll regret it, because they'll always be in danger living in Venezuela. So he hated that answer. So he then took the question to the positive. But what if I do get them out? What can happen then? Well, they can live in a country where they can live in peace, not be threatened, and be able to work and live a normal family life. The very next day, he started to inquire, and he got them out of Venezuela, and they now live in Colombia, close by to Venezuela, and are here living very peacefully to this day.
Well, let's talk about your new memoir, Keep Chewing the Granite. Tell listeners about that and why you decided to write it and what they can expect when they read it, and why you chose the title. That's an interesting title.
Well, keep chewing the granite means never, never, never quit. In the words of, or never, never give in the words of old Winston Churchill. And how I actually came up with that title is a story about it in my book, Keep Chewing the Granite: How Two Questions Can Change Your Life. And I was on one of these courses up in Scotland, a ski instructor course, one of the ones that I failed, the third one that I failed up there. And my trainer became a very good friend of mine, but his name is Jimmy Smith. And Jimmy was training us, and we were skiing in this terrible, terrible, difficult snow to ski on. It was like foot and a half deep slush. It was the end of April. And he said, in his Scottish accent, he said, "Okay, lads," he said, "one ski off." So we had to start skiing on one ski. So we got up the lift on one ski and start coming down. And I'd never done this before. And I would make one turn, splat, another turn, splat, maybe 2 turns, splat. Anyway, one go around, I landed right at Jimmy Smith's feet. And he looked down at me and he said, "Chalky, keep chewing the granite, laddie." And I've been munching away on granite ever since. And that's where, the two questions really come in, because they are the things that can really help you to keep chewing the granite. Why are the two questions so useful? The biggest reason that they're so useful is, of course, the what if question has been around forever. But it's not asking what if, but it's how you use them. As I've said, asking a negative followed by a positive, and the answers between the two, you can get a massive change of emotion, and that change of emotion really prompts you to take massive action. And that's exactly what I did. That's how it got me out of the police. That's how it eventually got me to become a fully certified ski instructor, because what happened was, up in Scotland, after the third time of me failing their full certification exam, they announced about me, Chalky White will never be fully certified because he's the wrong body shape, meaning I got bandy bowed legs. And in order to ski well, you need to be on flat skis. And because I got bowed legs, they wanted us to ski with our feet very tightly together, like so. And of course, you need to get pressure on the edges of the skis that are on the inside here, both of these, right, one at a time when you turn. And of course, I couldn't do that. So the only way I could turn was open my feet. But they wouldn't let me do that. And that's why they kept on failing me. So I went away from there very despondent, thinking I'm never going to get this full certification exam. But then I said to myself, and I'd heard that in New Zealand, they allowed you to take their full certification, even as a foreigner, provided you had good qualifications from another country. So I took a big risk, and I bought myself a ticket to New Zealand, 12,000 miles away from England. And I go down there, and this is all after me asking the what if questions to myself. What if I don't go to New Zealand? What if I don't go and try and take their exam? And again, that nasty word regret comes up every time. I'll regret it forever if I don't do this, because this is the major career dream that I've got. So I asked, what if I don't? You know, the word regret comes up, but what if I do? I might pass the first time, then I'll be fully certified, and then I can work in any country in the world, and maybe eventually I can even work in America, which of course eventually is what happened. So I went to New Zealand, I met a trainer there, and he said, his words to me were, well, if you get your goddamn feet open, you'll be on flat skis and you might be able to ski. I did that. My skiing really took off. I passed that exam the very first time, and that's the qualification I work with to this day. And the what if questions would be useful, and this is why one of the reasons why I want to start to become or get back into more of being a keynote speaker. It could be very good for organizations that have salespeople, and most organizations do have salespeople. And salespeople tend to get paid the most money in a company simply because it's the hardest job and very few people want to sell. And if they can ask themselves questions similar to, what if I don't call this guy that really makes me nervous? What will be the repercussions of that? And what if I don't ever pick up the phone again? What will be the repercussions of that? Well, that's obviously very major, because if he doesn't, he's going to lose his job. He's not going to make any money. He's not going to be able to take his family on the vacations he promised them he would. He can't have a nice car. He can't have any of the nice things that he wanted. So he hates those answers, so he or she, and then asks the opposite question. But what if I do pick up the phone and talk to this guy that really makes me nervous? What then? Well, his answers were, well, I might make the sale of the year. And I could make sale after sale after sale, and I could become a pretty wealthy guy if I keep on doing that and be able to do all the things that I want to do with my family and own very nice things. So again, there's that change of emotion. That's the big deal with this. The change of emotion causes you to act.
Let's take a quick break.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Well, let's talk about who your book targets. Talk about the type of audiences that would benefit from reading your memoir.
Well, obviously, the kind of people I've just spoke of, for example, salespeople, young people, for example, that have ambitions and goals. I mean, just as I did, there must be millions and millions of people across the world who, just like me, in their teens and 20s, that have got these burning ambitions and goals in them, but they're afraid to take action and do it. And they procrastinate and procrastinate. And the vast majority, of course, never ever follow through and fulfill their dreams. And a lot of them, just as I could have done, live their lives on somebody else's terms and not their own. So, yes, definitely salespeople, those kind of people, but anybody, but also people who just like a good story. I mean, there's all kinds of stories in the book about my police service, about me growing up, all that stuff, how I became a ski instructor, the story of you may have heard of a man called Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick, where are you speaking from, by the way, Curtis?
I'm in Wichita, Kansas.
You're in Kansas. Well, this gentleman's from New York City, and he became a very big ski client of mine. He was my ski client for 12 years. I even went to Europe to ski with him and all that stuff. And his name is Howard Lutnick. And he was the chairman and CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. That they lost the most people in the 9/11 attack in the Twin Towers. He lost 658 of his employees, his brother, and his best friend. How do you get over that? But luckily, this man is definitely a full-on A1 type personality for sure. Well, when I met him, I mean, this is a story from the book. He definitely, first of all, came across as being very arrogant, and what happened was he'd already, in Beaver Creek in Colorado, next door to Vail, he'd already fired a couple of ski instructors, and they called me on my phone and they said, "Would you ski with this guy?" I said, "Yeah, okay, why not?" So I go over to the hotel where he's staying, and I wait, and he was late, and he comes out and he was dressed just like an Italian mafioso with black greaseback hair. And the first word he said to me, he didn't even say hello. He said, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, "Actually, I tend to know more about people when I meet them face to face." And he didn't say another word. And everything went really well from then on. And going up a lift one day, I said to him, "You don't like ski instructors very much, do you?" He said, "No, not really." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, they don't do much for me." I said, "Is that also true of me?" He said, "Well, actually, you've taught me more than the other people in a couple of hours." And so, those are the kind of things that happen to you that, can really, again, change your life. I mean, I had a wonderful time. I used to go and ski with him in Aspen pretty much every year. He only skied in Vail and Beaver Creek for 1 year. And the rest of the time we were either in Aspen in Colorado, or 1 year we went to St. Moritz in Switzerland. Yeah, so it was tremendous, yeah.
What? Tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to be aware of.
Upcoming projects. Well, I'm actually going on vacation to Italy next month, and we're going to do a road trip over there. Upcoming projects. Well, I intend to try and get on more podcasts because, I mean, it's all very well having writing a book and publishing it, but of course, the hard thing to do, of course, with a book is to sell copies of it. And so, obviously, it's one of the reasons why I'm on your show is because I do want to promote that, and I will be on other podcasts as time goes on for sure. So that's basically my projects right now, and also I'd like to do more public speaking, keynote speaking if I can. I actually did some 2 or 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. I went to a couple of times to a place called the Stout Street Organization, and that it's a center for people that are compulsorily there, trying to get through alcoholism, and also drug addiction. And I went and actually explained my what if questions to them, and I got tremendous results there. So that's really encouraging me now to do more public speaking, keynote speaking if I can. Again, as I said, to companies, organizations that have salespeople, or anybody that like good stories. I mean, like I said, there's all kinds of great stories in there. As I said, there's all kinds of stories from my police time, where I was a witness to a very nastily committed murder, and I was also, as a cop, I was also nearly murdered twice. Once with a knife, and once by strangulation. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. Do you want to
But of
go into
course,
the?
as you may well know, Curtis, British police are not armed with firearms. The only thing I had, I'll show it to you right now, was one of these, which we call a truncheon, and that's the only weapon that we had. And so, in some ways, being a British cop is more dangerous than being, say, an American cop, because you can't stand
Absolutely.
there with a gun and say, if you come towards me, I'm going to shoot. You can't do that. So you haven't got. So everything you do, certainly when it comes to arresting someone, is up close and personal, whether you like it or not. And it's still the same now. I think they don't have weapons now, but they have mace now, I believe.
Wow, I never knew that.
Never knew what.
Never knew that British police didn't have firearms.
Yeah, there are some units, and it's mostly for just diplomatic protection. But the average cop on the street, whether in a car or walking a beat, they do not have a gun.
Wow.
Never have. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but the London Metropolitan Police was the very first organised police force in the world.
Oh, I didn't know
You,
that.
you might have heard they're called bobbies.
No, I'm not too up on the
Yeah,
lot.
they're often called bobbies, and the reason for that is at the time the guy that founded the London Metropolitan Police in 1829 was the British Prime Minister, a man called Robert Peel, Bobby Peel. That's why they got called bobbies. And sometimes they even get called peelers because after his second name, Robert Peel. It's either Bobby or peelers, but Bobby is the most common. And I've actually got here, look, this is still my helmet I still have from 1969 when I first you start to wear this. Yeah.
There you go, listeners, an educational lesson on the British Police Department. So,
But I had some very good times in it, no doubt, and I made some wonderful friends in the police. But I just did not want to continue to do that forever, because I had this burning ambition to be involved in sport, which I eventually did, of course, becoming a ski instructor, and travel. You know, I've now lived in 11 different countries through the years.
okay, well, so everybody can keep up with everything that you're up to, throw out your contact info.
My contact information, yeah. My telephone number is a United States number, so +1, then 970-390-6267. And my email address is my name, Chalky, Chalky, G for golf, O, @gmail.com. So chalkygo@gmail.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook. And there's one other the name of which I can't bring to mind.
You have a website?
No, I dismantled that because I wasn't using it.
Okay. We'll close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if that was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Like I said, when I failed, and I did have a big failure once when I started my own, or after I started my own successful ski instructing business in France, where I was like a one-man ski school and went very, very well. And I started to be able to employ another ski instructor because I couldn't teach them all myself. I then decided, along with two others, but I made the major decision to put an extension on a lodge that we bought, that I originally bought. And the big regret I have with that is that I didn't work out the numbers for financing this thing properly. And as a result, we went broke and I had to quit my business. And after that is actually, the good news is when I eventually the year later, I went to America, and I was then a ski instructor in the United States for 25 years in Beaver Creek, mostly in Beaver Creek, next door to Vail in Colorado. And as I said, I wrote a ski instruction book that became #1 on Amazon.com, and it's called The Chalky Whites, The 7 Secrets of Skiing. And maybe you're wondering how I came up with that name. Well, when I was writing this book, which took me about 4 years to do it, this is pretty funny. I couldn't think of a name. And I thought all the time I was writing it, I thought, I'll come up with a name. But I did eventually come up with a name, but I was never very happy with it. And the name of it was Skiing and the Power of Balance. Well, anyway, one day I'm on a ski lift in Aspen with a couple of clients. One of them actually was the gentleman I spoke of earlier on, Howard Lutnick. And I told them the title of this book, Skiing and the Power of Balance. And the other gentleman said, "That is so bleeping boring." I went, "Well, okay, if you can come up with a better title, I'm all ears." And so the very next day I skied with him again. We're on a chairlift again. And he said, "I've got a title for you." I said, "What?" He said, The 7 Secrets of Skiing. I said, "Really?" He said, "Well, you've got the 7 steps in the book. Is that correct?" "Yeah, that's right." "Well, just call them secrets because they kind of are." And he said, "Are you famous?" I said, "Well, really only in my own mind." And he said, "Why don't you call it Chalky Whites, the 7 Secrets of Skiing? And then people will think you're famous even if you're not." So that's how the book got its name.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Chalky. Please be sure to follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and visit www.curveball337.com for more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Chalky, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining me.
Curtis, I really, really appreciate it, and I wish you all the very best long into the future. Thank you again.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.